You know, Ralph, they already know about me. I think they already know about me. And I was given the advice to be as loud as I can because safety is in numbers. And that's what I'm thinking about right now. I don't really care anymore. I feel like I am going to war for my country. And people do it every day. So why can't I do it? And if I am a casualty in this war against humanity, well, I've died for my country. And that's how I'm seeing this now. Because I'd rather die fighting than end up where they are leading us. And it's very, I mean.
This is a very serious issue because it's given them unlimited power. It's total power. Now, I'll give you one sentence. The man that I just talked to 3-4 days, maybe about a week ago, told me there are some major developments going to happen soon. He did not tell me soon, but he said on our side. There's things going to happen that they don't want to happen. And this could trigger it, this thing with this killing babies.
We'll keep it on the down low right now until we roll that out. But that's in the cards right now. And I think even just a snippet of what you just said, you didn't even go into it, but we can maybe release that to show people what is coming. And the importance of this topic is very real, and it is coming to a neighborhood near you. I mean, it seems like it's coming very quickly, but we'll stop there, and I will start to introduce you properly, and then we can go into the conversation.
Good.
Hi, this is Sheena Alexandra, and you are waking up to the New World Order. And today we have got Ralph Epperson, the king of conspiracy. Ralph has been studying this topic for over 50 years. He has written several books about the New World Order, the Hidden Hand, quite a few others as well. He's talked all across America. He's been on TV, he's been on radio, and now we are going to talk to him and learn all about what he has learned over the last 50 years. Welcome, Ralph.
Thank you very much, Sheena. It's a real pleasure being here. I hope we can have some ideas shared with your listeners and viewers, and maybe we can get some people to be aware there's something going on in this country. And that's what I've done for 50 years of my life, is develop that information to share it with others.
Thank you so much for the work that you're doing, Ralph. I've learned so much from you in just such a short amount of time. And I think before we start with this interview, I would love to dedicate this interview to all of America, the Americans right now that are dedicating their lives to their work and their family, and the Americans that love the idea of America and the freedom that America represents. I think what we're going to learn today, though, that we have been deceived on quite a few levels, and it's Ralph's, I guess, duty in life, or what life purpose, to awaken the American people to these hidden facts of what it means to be an American. So I guess we can start there, Ralph. Let's just talk a little bit about, before I dive into the questions, can we just learn what it means to be a conspiracy theorist, and what does that definition mean, and start there.
Well, I'm a college graduate, and I moved to California after Arizona, and when I did, I was introduced to the young man I met named Jim, revisionist history, and I said, I don't know what that is, and I said, that's the point. You don't know, you're going to read. I said, I don't want to read. He started me reading, and once I did, I started figuring out there's something going on in this in America, and I discovered it, and I've read over 1,100 books. I've written 4 books. I've done 30 DVDs. They're all, most of which are on the internet, and I'm now convinced there's a conspiracy at work. Now, there's only two ways to view history. Number one, things happen by accident. I call that the accidental view of history. And the second one is the conspiratorial view. And I'm convinced the conspiratorial view of history is correct. Now, what does it mean to be an American? We believed in unalienable rights according to the Declaration of Independence, which means we live by God-given rights. And once we have a God-given right, only God can take them away. No government can take them away, no majority, no minority, no mob, no nation, no group of individuals, no, you're not your next door neighbor. They come with the product when you're born. And that's what it means to be an American. Now, we've lost that, and that's what we're going to talk about. Why have we lost it? What's going on in this country? And that's what I'm hoping we can discuss briefly in whatever way you wish in the next hour or so.
Yes, and I can definitely feel that things are changing inside of America and all around the globe. Something big is coming. People feel it. People are talking about it. We've got the money system, we've got the education system, we've got the medical system, we've got all these systems that we rely on, and something big is going to happen. And I don't know what that is. I think you probably have a better idea of what that is, but it doesn't feel good right now. And I think the only thing that I am finding that is relieving is the fact that I am talking about it. And I am making a difference and people are listening, but we need more people to listen. So
I agree. That's what this is all about. By the way, if I may, just in one sentence, I've committed my adult life to education, not violence, not grabbing my guns and running to the hills, not shooting people, or doing education, education, education. I'm a teacher. And I do talk shows like this. I've done over 600 of them. I've been on History Channel twice, by the way, talking about conspiracy, which was rather startling because I didn't think they were interested in that subject. And so I've done everything I can to educate. I put out DVDs, I write books, I do talk shows like this. I try to educate, even when I'm talking to people on the street or in my neighbors or whatever. I try to educate.
You know, you're in Wikipedia as well.
Yes, I know. I was stunned when someone told me what Wikipedia was. But Wikipedia's, it's got a little chapter about me. The best review of my past is on my website because it's something I typed in. I tell people when they want to use that as an introduction for me to pick and choose whatever they want because it's maybe 3/4 of a page long. But it tells about the U of A and the schools and the books I've written, etc. So that's a good place to find out about. But basically, you're right. I'm a teacher. I'm trying to educate, and that's the only method I use: education, not violence, never, not screaming, not getting angry, not violence, nothing.
That's good. That's good. Can we talk about what it is to be a conspiracy theorist, or what does the word conspiracy mean?
The word is defined very simply: 2 or more people operating in secret with an evil purpose. 3 things. 2 or more, 1 person cannot conspire. 2, in secret. They've got to keep it secret. And thirdly, they've got to have an evil purpose. Now, why do they keep it secret? Because it's evil. Evil people seek secrecy. Good people seek publicity. They don't want publicity. That's what I'm in the business of, making it public to show you what's been going on. And I use their own literature. That's what makes me unique. I won't say unique, but many writing like I am. But that's what we are doing, is using their own literature to show the American people, why are these things happening? Because there's a conspiracy. 2 or more people meeting in secret with an evil purpose.
Well, let's start there, because I mean, we've heard straight out from plenty of people at the top. George Bush Sr. even said, we have the opportunity to forge ahead with a new world order. Can we start with that?
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
What is this new world order that you've been studying?
Well, it's not new with George Bush. George Bush was the one that made it popular about 1990, but it goes back to the founding of this nation. If you'll get the back of your dollar bill, I presume you use American money in Europe, in Australia, do you not?
No,
No?
I do have dollars though, and I will look at my dollar the next time.
The back of the
You know,
dollar bill.
I've seen this on screen from you quite a few times, so I trust what you're saying is correct.
Okay, now let's talk about that. The Great Seal of the United States has two circles. One's got an eagle on it, one's got a pyramid. Nations only have one seal. What's a seal? A king would fold a document, a treaty, let's say, and leave a crease like this, and then drop wax on it. And when it started to harden, he'd stick his ring in it, and that made a seal, the impression. And then he pulled it out, and it dried that way. It cooled until there was ridges, and it looked like the king's ring. If the treaty got to the next party and it had been broken, he would now know it because you can't reconstruct it. He would want to separate it and know that the seal was real. So seals, nations have been using seals for hundreds of years. We have two of them. Why? When you find out what this seal is, the one on the left with the pyramid, we start to understand what happened to this nation way back in 1787. Now let's go. You can, when you get a chance, put the Great Seal up with the pyramid, and we'll read the top layer, Annuit Septis, and the bottom layer, Novus Ordo Seclorum. Annuit, Latin for announcing, Septis, the conception of, or the birth of, announcing the birth of, the Novus New Ordo Order Seclorum world. Announcing the birth of the New World Order. Now notice the pyramid. It's flat on top, and there's a pyramid on it, a triangle on top, and it's got eyes and flat, lines, meaning it's a sun or something like that. But it's not on the pyramid yet. They're announcing the birth of something. What is it? The New World Order. So George Bush said it's going to happen, and we're going to lead us to this. That was our nation was committed to in 1787 when they designed the Great Seal of the United States. Now, what is it? It's a totally new civilization. Oh, I don't believe that. They do. They know it because we were committed to that. America has a secret destiny. The New World Order. What is it? We're not going to have families anymore. We're not going to have private property anymore. We're not going to have marriage anymore. We're not going to raise our children. That is where we're going as a nation. And they're going to destroy all religion and all government. That's what it is. My second book is entitled The New World Order. I published it in 1989, actually 1990. It was finished in 89. It took them a while to print it, get it printed. So it's 1990. And I was warning the American people on a tour around the United States for 3 years, from 85 to 87. The New World Order is coming. Here's what it is. We talked about the Great Seal. We introduced people who were in favor of it. Of course, in 85, I didn't know about George Bush in 1990, but I warned people about the year 2000. It was going to start, and even I found documentation for that date. I wasn't a prophet. I wasn't making a prediction. I was an historian, found the evidence in their own literature.
And what was that date?
That was the date of 1st of January 2000.
Right.
This might sound rather strange to you, but I was so convinced that they were going to, I'll say, kill me and others that very night. I sat in I'm single, and I was single in 1990, and 2000, 1999. I sat in my living room with 2 sheets of paper with lines on them like this, and I was trying to say, when I get here, there's 24 one-hour Happy New Years, and as it moved like this, another Happy New Year, until it went, now that it was January 2nd starting over again. So I was finding out when will it be midnight at the first time zone, that's the Greenwich Mean Time. So that wasn't it. It didn't happen then. It didn't happen when George Bush was at the Great Pyramid of Giza, a Great Pyramid of Giza, when they were expecting the God in the triangle to land and take up and bring us the New World Order.
Well, I think they had a few things to do, at that time. I mean, we we were still thinking that America was great, and it was before 9/11. So I think they still had a little bit more work to do, and that's maybe why that date didn't happen.
Yes, but it didn't happen. But that was the date they predicted back in 17. In fact, it goes back 6,000 years.
Wow.
This conspiracy is 6,000 years old,
Wow.
and that's what I write. Got videos out. You'll have to watch it. I've got over 30 videos, DVDs of various lengths, from about 1 hour to 27 hours.
Mm.
I'm not saying sit and watch 27 hours, but I get people saying they can't watch a 4-hour DVD. No one. I said, listen, the Super Bowl's going to happen next Sunday, and I guarantee you, people are going to sit there for 6 hours, and they're not.
I sat for 4 hours and I listened to your DVD. It was very interesting. So I think people are so consumed right now. They don't understand what's going on. I get it. I want to consume this information. So I will sit through 27 hours of your content any day.
Well, I understand that. I appreciate that. And it's 4 hours long. It's called America's Secret Destiny. Mm-hmm. And if you want to know what those things mean, it's an updated version of the speech I started giving in 1985, warning people about the year 2000. Mm-hmm. 15 years before the New World was supposed to start, I started warning the American people and what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Well, I definitely know that it's forging ahead, and I don't think that they're going to reach their end goal, because there's a lot of people waking up to this fact, and there's a lot of people angry with what's going on. So, let's go into who are they? That's a question that I get all the time. Obviously, we know George Bush Sr. is one of them, but who is they?
The pyramid is this conspiracy on the back of our dollar bill.
Yeah.
There are layers.
Who's responsible for this New World Order idea?
Okay. The lower layers are the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, the Bilderbergers, even the Masons. The Masons are up a little bit higher, but there's a group of various layers, and they're all part of the triangle. But notice it's flat. We now know who the top layer is. Mm-hmm. And I can identify them, although I'm not going to, and I'll tell you why in a minute. I now know, I've got their names. I know where they live. I know who they are. But they're not names that if I told you, you would never know. In other words, these are people way at the very top that are extremely, remember what I said, they got to be secret. Mm. But they're the ones, and there's 9 of them. And the reason I don't talk about that, except very rarely, is because if you don't believe the CFR is involved, Bill Clinton joined the CFR and the Council on Foreign Relations, CFR, and when he did, he appointed over 200 members of the CFR, the Council on Foreign Relations. Mm-hmm. So they're dealing with the outside world for our government to give us a world government, and Bill Clinton joined it, and he named their people. The reason Trump is having trouble keeping his people is he didn't go to the CFR roster as Clinton did and say, you become this and this and this and this. And they took it because they were all supporting the same goal of Bill Clinton.
Yeah. Sort of on that note, Ralph, we see the same thing with the Trilateral Commission. So every president since Bush Sr., has been part of the Trilateral Commission, and again, you said that that's the second layer in the triangle.
Well, it's lower.
They all agree.
Yes.
And I don't know about Trump. I don't know where he sits with this. He's not part of the Trilateral Commission, and though his committee is, there's a few.
Well, let me say this.
So. I don't know. I want to think that Trump is on our side and he is making a difference. But then on the other hand, he's not doing anything to stop the 5G rollout and all the behind the scenes things that are coming together for this one world government.
Don't expect him to do miracles, but I want to warn you, point this out. I'm not going to talk about this except in one sentence. Mm-hmm. I have been told by someone that came from Phoenix to talk to me, and we met privately. No bugs, nothing. He told me there's some major things going to happen very quickly on our side. Mm-hmm. That's all he would tell me. Mm-hmm. So let's just be patient. Now notice this. Notice what the media has done to Donald Trump. What has the Republican Party done to Donald Trump? even the Democrats, without fail, come up with what they call talking points. You can see it when they show the news today, like on Fox. They all use the same words, which means the word goes out like this. Okay, here's your point for to talk about these, and it's always the same charge, which means the media is controlled. And in my first book, I told you who controls the media, how J.P. Morgan and the bankers took over the media, and then took over the radio, took over the newspapers first, then took over the newspaper, the radio, and then got involved with the television and then cable. So they control all that.
Yeah, I stopped watching the news probably 3 years ago, and my brain has just been able to open up with a whole bunch of brand new, wonderful information. I have time to listen to you now because I don't watch the news. I don't watch TV. It's fake, and I'm wanting real information, truth. I'm looking for the truth, and you won't find it on mainstream media. And that was probably one of the first steps that I took on this awakening path. And this was before I was even awake, was get rid of my TV. So
let me say this. It's just a quick story. I had my car repaired, and they didn't have a loaner, which they normally give me. So I was being driven from maybe about a 15-minute drive to. So the second guy that came was a young man. The first one was a little older, and he drove me, took me home, and then the second guy came to take me back later in the afternoon. So he said, "What do you do?" And I said, "I'm a writer." He said, "Well, really, what do you do?" I said, "I write about, I'm a historian." "Oh, really, what do you write?" I said, "I'm a writer about conspiracy." He said, "What?" I said, "I write about conspiracy." "Oh, man, I want to know about that." So we talked for 15 minutes. This is a young man, I would guess in his middle 20s. He's already starting to question. Wait a minute, you're not supposed to do that. You and your generation, they don't want to know this stuff. He wants to know. So I talked to him, and I said, "Listen, would you like to read?" "Oh, yes." I said, "Here's what I would do. Watch 3 DVDs. I named them for him. And I said, "Then here's my book. Read that last 1, 2, 3, and then read the book." And while I'm talking, the customer service representative came on. I've known her for a long time. She said, "What do you got there?" "Oh, I've got this book." And I've got into there for 20 years. I don't talk about this. So she wanted to know. So she got a book. And then the 3 videos. And then I got a message last night from the third guy that drove me. He said, "If I'd known who you were, we would have talked about that coming back." So that's 3 people. Then the guy said, when he was driving us to, there were 2 of us being driven. I was first, and the second guy was sitting in the second seat. I'm the driver, the passenger side. And we were talking about nonsense. So he said, "Listen, do you know this guy?" And he said, "Who?" So he held up the book and said, I've read those books. The 4th guy. So 4 people yesterday got free samples of the book, and they all knew about it already, which means there's an audience that I don't even know about.
Well, Ralph, I have to say, I reached out to, I've made so many friends on this awakening journey. So there's some people that I chat with, and I said, "Oh, you're never going to believe I got in touch with Ralph," and they're like, "Oh, he is a king. He is doing such good work." And I'm like, "Oh, that's wonderful."
Well, I can't take it up. Go ahead.
Going back on your point about the young generation being awake to what's going on, I have to say, I'm seeing that same thing, and it's so rewarding to know that the youth are very alert to what is going on right now. And I've got a couple of examples. I've got 2 nephews. One is in his teens, and one is in his double digits. But they're awake, and they are asking questions, and they are asking the right questions. And unlike my parents, which I love my family, I love my dad and my mom, they did an amazing job raising me. The one thing that I would have to say, though, and I really respect my father on this and my mom, they allowed us to figure it out on our own. So we've been figuring it out, I've been figuring it out for over 4 decades. But my dad is very aware of these things. He knows about the money system. He knows about the Council of Foreign Relations. He knows about the Trilateral Commission. And he didn't say anything to me because he wanted me to make my own judgment and so forth. And I get that. I love that empowerment that he has taught me. But I am never going to raise my daughter with the false information that we have been given about the money system, about our history, about science, and about the real evil things that are going on in this world that I don't really want to talk about, but I'm not going to lie about this. I'm not going to hold anybody's reputation at hand. I'm not going to lie. I'm just going to be very honest, because our youth are the ones that are going to really save the world. And the more they understand what's going on and the more they ask questions, the stronger this place is going to be. So
let me tell you, you've asked who are they. I want you to know that Bill Clinton in 1992, when he accepted the nomination of the Democrat Party on live national television, I presume there were only 3 networks, maybe CNN News, but those 3, you had no choice. You couldn't watch Roxanne or Love Life with Father, all these programs. You had to watch Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton told us with his own mouth, right now, live, nationwide, there was a conspiracy. He was part of it, and they're going to make him president. He said that with his own mouth. Bill Clinton is a conspiracy realist. How did he know? He told us 2 people got him into politics. One was President John Kennedy. There's a photograph of Bill Clinton taken in the Rose Garden in 1963. That summer, he went to a thing called Boys Nation, and he got a chance to shake hands with John Kennedy. Hi there, and so that's Kennedy encouraged him to go up there. But the second one is a man that the American people had never heard of. He mentioned by verbal acknowledgement Dr. Carroll Quigley. Dr. Carroll Quigley was in support of this conspiracy and wrote a book 1966 when Bill Clinton was in college, Georgetown, from 64 to 68. So right in the middle, Quigley published his book, and I got a copy of the alumni magazine, where it's called, that said it was required reading. So we know that Clinton had to read that book to take Quigley's course. And then he praised him. Quigley said he was made privy to their secret papers for 2 years. This is extremely rare. I've been looking for books like this for 50 years. I could count them on one hand. So he was admitting there was a conspiracy, because Quigley called it an international Anglophile network that, listen to this, controls both parties equally. Quigley said that. Clinton agreed to it. Now, Clinton, as soon, if I may, after he got through with his 4 years, went to Oxford on a Rhodes Scholarship, because Cecil Rhodes, a member of the International Anglophile Network, funded a thing called the Rhodes Scholarship Program that took high school seniors, smart, intelligent ones, brought them to Oxford for 2 years, and guess where little Billy Clinton went? To Oxford to learn more about the Rhodes Scholarship. And then when he came back, he joined the Council on Foreign Relations.
Wow.
So in other words, they call me a conspiracy, if I may, conspiracy theorist. Bill Clinton is a conspiracy realist. He was made privy to it by the greatest writer on their side, Dr. Carroll Quigley.
I mean, aren't all presidents made privy to it? I mean, from what I understand, no. I read I think it was in your audio PowerPoint presentation, that they have 8 years of Democrat, 8 years of Republican, 8 years of Democrat. So the presidents don't necessarily know that they're being elected in by these elite, but they actually are.
Abraham Lincoln was assassinated by this conspiracy. Warren G. Harding was assassinated by this conspiracy. President Garfield, President McKinley.
Wow. What about John F. Kennedy?
John Kennedy, yes. There's no, by the way, that's just as one sentence, there's no question that Kennedy was killed by a conspiracy. I've got a DVD out, takes about an hour and a half, 2 hours, I guess, and shows you the Warren Commission knew that he did not fire any shot that day. There's photographic evidence of that in the Warren Commission. So that means they were killed. These were people that they thought they could trust, and they found out for whatever reason they couldn't trust them, so they were quietly taken out of the scene. And Abraham Lincoln and John Kennedy were good examples, because they issued money that was not borrowed, and contained no interest. Only two presidents have ever done that, Lincoln and Kennedy. And isn't it strange that both of these men did the same thing and they were both assassinated? Isn't that a strange coincidence?
I want to talk about a few other ways that the elite control us. I know that they influence the election. But before we go into that, I just wanted to ask, can we talk a little bit about what happened in 1933 with the Bankruptcy Act and what happened in America that changed?
I don't know much about the Bankruptcy Act.
Okay, then let's not talk about that.
I just know about the Federal Reserve.
Yeah.
The Federal Reserve is not federal. It's privately owned. We do not even know who owns it. We, the people, don't know. Congressmen have tried to audit the Federal Reserve, and they can't get the support of the Republicrats, meaning the parties that are controlled by the same power at the top don't want the Federal Reserve audited, so we're not going to ever find out. Maybe someday there'll be a whistleblower, but so far from 1913 to 2019, there's been no audit, no whistleblower. So we don't know.
Okay, so we know that they're involved in the money system, and we know that they're involved in elections.
Yes.
Let's talk about the false flags that we're seeing, the wars that are just endless. Let's talk a little bit about that.
The Unseen Hand was my first book, written in 1985. And as far as I can tell, I was the first historian. I will use the word historian because what do I do?
Absolutely.
I look for books of the past who were written by people at the time, or maybe written about it by doing research that I haven't done, that there is a conspiracy, and that conspiracy planned the creation. The crash of 1920. We don't talk about the 20 crash, but that was created in 1920. Warren G. Harding decided to solve the unemployment of 12% in less than a year and a half. It was down to 2.4%. 12 to 4, 2.4. Obama had a recession when he was elected. He had it floating around, no changes. Harding ended a recession with 11 or 12% unemployment, down to 4%, 2% in less than a year and a half. Why didn't Obama do that? Because the Federal Reserve didn't want him to.
Mm-hmm. What about the crash? You go on. The crash of 2008, is that part of this?
Well, that was the one where I think that Bill Clinton urged, listen to this, no banker will make a loan when he's not got reasonable assurance that the person taking the loan out will make the payments in sequence. You got to have a good credit, a good history of credit. You walk in and want to buy a house, they're not going to loan you money unless they are convinced you're going to pay them back. Clinton started urging the banks to make loans to less than those essentials. Now, why would a banker make a loan to someone who he knew might not make the payments? Because he was assured that he would be bailed, that the bank would be bailed out. Who's going to bail the bank out? The Federal Reserve. Where does the Federal Reserve get bailed out? By making the money down to the bank. They're going to get bailed out by, guess who? The taxpayers. And guess who that is? But we don't get bailed out.
I know.
That's the way it works. Everyone got bailed out. That's the reassurance that the bankers knew they would not lose any money by making bad loans.
Yeah.
People were getting loans made when they didn't have the creditability to make the payments. Why? Because they were reassured by the government. Bill Clinton said, no, we got the ownership of a home with the cottage, the white fence and the ivy growing on your fence and up the side of your walls. You've got 2.3 children and a Scottish dog and 2 parakeets. That's the American dream, and the way to do that, even though you can't afford it, is to take out the money, and then when you don't pay, we'll bill you out.
Or take your house.
Yes. And that's one way to get a house at a much reduced price, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Can we talk about
America didn't get bailed out.
No. No. I have a feeling we're on another, probably harder crash. It's going to be worse than 2008. It's probably worse than
Say this, if there's going to be a crash, I guarantee you it'll be because of the privately owned Federal Reserve. The president has no say in who is selected to be the chairman. The bankers name, maybe give him a list of 5, he can pick whatever he wants, but he has no control. The president, not even the House, and certainly not the judicial branch, but they have no control over it. So when the Federal Reserve Chairman decides to raise the rates, he has the total power to do so. No one can stop him. So if there's going to be a crash, it's not Trump. It's going to be the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve caused a crash in 1920. It caused a major one in 29. It causes reflation. Here's why. Let me see if I can explain it very quickly. I'm going to write a book, How to Make a Killing in the Stock Market. It's going to be 1 page. Open it up. It says, buy low, sell high. You buy when the market's down here. They raise the market up to here, and just before it gets to the peak, you start selling here, and then the price goes back down again, and then you take the profits that you stored under your mattress and down and buy. Buy low, sell high. So the private reserve, if you know what they're going to do and raise the rates, you can get out in advance. And all the wealth you got out in 1928, less than a year before the crash in October 29. What did they know that you, the average American, didn't know? How come they knew? You're playing golf with the Federal Reserve Chairman. He said, oh, by the way, Bill, you might want to know this. I'm going to raise the rates on Thursday. You know that. So he goes out and starts selling.
Yeah.
That's where we are.
It sounds very similar to war, and as well, people know that things are going to happen beforehand. Can we talk a little bit about the research that you've done on the various wars that we've seen throughout the century?
Excuse me, my mouth is very dry.
That's okay.
Let me say this. Let me get seated again, start over again. In the unseen hand, as far as I can tell, from all of my research up to that date, from 73 to 85, it's 12 years, I could not find anyone that linked the American Revolution, the War of 1812, the Civil War, and World Wars I, II, and Vietnam. Well, of course, the Vietnam didn't start until, well, it started in 64. That's incorrect. We went through those 4. They're all linked. By what? The European bankers did not have a central bank like a Federal Reserve in America. So we had a revolution. They encouraged us to have the revolution because the president has very little taxing power under the basic constitution. He didn't have the income tax, the property tax. He had something to do on imports and exports. So George Washington said, how am I going to pay for this? So he got Hamilton to create the first bank of America, which had the power to issue paper money out of nothing, loan it to the government at interest. So from 1791, 1787, well, I've got my dates, I'm a little confused here.
Okay.
Anyway, it was a 20-year period. They created the first bank for 20 years, which was going to expire in 1811, so 1791. So they created the first bank in the United States that was going to pay off these loans that we borrowed. So that was done for 20 years. And then Monroe made sure in 1811 that we not have any more payments to make. We didn't renew the first bank of the United States. So what happened next? 1811, 1812, the War of 1812. With who? The English Bank, the Bank of England started a war. So our sailors got inducted with some phony excuse. And so we started another war in 1860. How are you going to pay for it? So they created the second Bank of the United States from 1812, 1860 to 1836. Andrew Jackson was elected on a president, re-elected on a promise. Central bank and no Jackson, or Jackson and no bank. If you want the bank, don't vote for me. If you don't want the bank, vote for me. And Jackson was overwhelmingly elected. The second bank died. No more central bank. No Federal Reserve, nothing like it. So what happened? The European bankers created a group called the Knights of the Golden Circle.
Mm-hmm.
I looked for them in over 20 books when I was writing The Unseen Hand to find out what I could find out. There's not one mention of the Knights of the Golden Circle in any of the books written about the Civil War on the bookshelves. This was in 83 to 85.
Mm-hmm.
Why? They don't want us to know.
Mm-hmm.
They planned the Civil War, the Knights of the Golden Circle, and then we got a Civil War. They walked into Lincoln and said, Lincoln, you got this war. Yeah, this is my Hollywood version. They said, you got this war? He said, yes, I do. How are you going to pay for it, Lincoln? Well, I don't know yet. Well, why don't you, we're in the banking business, the European banks, will loan you the money at 36% interest.
Mm-hmm.
I think I don't know. I have credit cards. I don't borrow money. I use it and then pay it off when I get my first statement. I haven't paid interest on my credit card for 30 years, but I pay it off quickly. So now it's 18%. If you don't, is that what it is? I don't.
I don't know. I don't watch TV and I don't have a credit. I mean, I have a credit card for your same purposes, but
so anyway,
I don't know what the loan rate is.
I think if it's 18%, this is double that.
Yeah, I know.
So he issued the greenback dollar, which was not borrowed, contained no interest payments, and was not going to be redeemable in gold.
Right.
So guess what happened to Abraham Lincoln? Less than a week after the war ended, he went to a play and was shot by John Wilkes Booth, a member of the Knights of the Golden Circle.
Oh.
Isn't that interesting? Now go to your history books and see if there's any mention of the Knights of the Golden Circle, even 30 years, 40 years later. Zero. Why? We're not supposed to know about them. Now, let me finish. There's another step in here. They wanted a second Civil War because they didn't get the central bank. They tried to impeach Johnson and missed it by one vote. He was the vice president, became president. So they created the Ku Klux Klan, the KKK, in 1867, 2 years after the war. They created this thing. They paid for people to go to the South and agitate again between blacks and whites, stir them up. Listen, you're not free. They didn't give you freedom, and you're still going to be this. And they probably lynched people, blacks, and created more. But the second Civil War never happened. They buried $6 billion in gold all over the South and the West. I live in Arizona. There's a thing called Lost Dutchman Mine. It's been claimed. I can't prove it or not prove it. Even the guy that tried it couldn't. But there's a mine the Lost Dutchman found. He salted that and made people go up and find it. For 30 years, people going up into Superstition Mountains where it's supposed to be kept getting shot because someone's at the top saying, you're not going to find my gold. And it wasn't their gold. It was the Knights of the Golden Circle.
Wow.
One last thing, if I may, just real quick.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
K is the 11th letter of the alphabet. Now I'm going to test your knowledge of math here. Hold on, Sheena. We're gonna.
I'll try.
3 times K is how many? 3 times K, 11. 3 times 11 is, hey, give you the prize for the.
That's actually my favorite number, and I don't like that it's connected to this, but go for it. Tell us.
It's the number of the degrees in the Masonic Lodge that controls all of worldwide Masonry. 33rd degree is the top layer. The top layer of the Masons, not of the conspiracy. This group takes orders from the top layer of the conspiracy.
So the KKK is a political group? Because I didn't do much research in this.
It was intended to start agitation between the blacks who are now freed and the whites again, and to get the South to claim that. I was taught in my history books, the South shall rise again. Yes, we're going to rise again into a new second civil war. And the Knights of the Golden Circle planned it, but it didn't come about. And I still can't find out why. And I think it was enough is enough. We're not going to start a second Civil War. We're going to rebuild the South, like build buildings and schools and churches again.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Can we talk? Yeah. Can we move forward a little bit and talk about some of the more recent scenarios that have been falsely pushed upon us?
Yes. Well, the best next example is the World War I. Started some archduke gets shot, and suddenly there's war over there, and multiple nations started getting involved. For the first time in the history of the world, I don't think more than one nation attacked another nation, or maybe two attacked two, 3 or 4, 5, 6 got involved. This was a major war. And the purpose of the war was to convince the public worldwide that governments and nations cause wars. So the solution is to eliminate nationalism, create a world government called the League of Nations. Now, the League of Nations was not ratified by our Senate. Woodrow Wilson, our president, signed it. Oh, yeah, we got to do that, boy. These nations cause wars. We're going to stop it by creating a world government, eliminate national borders. He came back, and the American people said, like, like that, now we don't want your stinking war. So guess what? The group called the International Anglophile Network in England created the Council on Foreign Relations in 1920 to convince the American people we need a world government called the United Nations. So we started a war with many nations involved. God, there's 4 or 5 of us lined up against Germany and Italy and France, wherever they were, attacking Russia and nations. And then once again, it failed. United Nations is still there, but it's no world government. And
I will say though, Ralph, they are the ones that are holding all of the evilness together right now, in my opinion. I mean, it's not an opinion, it's a fact, but I believe it's evil what they're doing. That whole unit of people, I mean, I know the people inside probably don't know what's going on, but do you know the history of the United Nations? Yes. Can we talk just briefly about who set that up and what they've got their tentacles in everything, and they're rolling out Agenda 21, they're rolling out 5G, they're rolling out, regulations and standards that aren't protecting us at all. We think that they're this, high and mighty organization that are there to promote peace, which is what I always was taught to believe, but it could not be further from the truth.